And I remember in January of 2015, my revenue was $0. $0. You look at my payroll now, it's about $150,000 a week.
You have a top salesperson, you have a top engineer, and they wreck the company. Have you always had this mindset, if they are toxic, they're gone?
Just because that salesperson is a fucking great salesperson doesn't mean they create long-term sustainable value for the health of the organization.
I'm curious, why do you think so many people are hesitant to invest in a coach? Whether it's mindset, whether it's business or leadership, why do you think so few actually take that step?
The best coaches charge real fucking money. And so really it's the expense that intimidates a lot of people. I don't believe that people are as close-minded or lack confidence in their ability to self-improve. They're just limited by their financial resources. When I was 25 years old, I just wanted to be rich, right? And then when I got rich, I wanted to be powerful. Or then I wanted to be famous. In this new season of life, what I'm really more focused on now is
I needed to fail as much as I did in order to succeed as much as I have. Jeremy Jensen, welcome to The Way of the Wolf.
Excellent, man. Thank you for having me in your studio, in your home, on this beautiful ranch in Spring, Texas, man. I walked into the 6,000 square foot house sitting on 1 acre and I'm like, how many kids do you have? You're like, no kids, bro, just me. So thank you for having me, though. This is an amazing place, and I'm happy to be here to spend the 1 hour with you.
I really appreciate it, man. All right, so we actually met a couple of months ago at a Team Savage event. You shared a stage with Sean Lynch. And while it was kind of challenging to hear the things that you were saying in that venue, I found myself gradually creeping closer and closer to the stage because I wanted to hear the things that you had to say. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure you recall afterwards, I found my way to you and said, hey, man, like, I appreciate your perspective. You started talking about how you're leveraging AI in your business, and we're going to get into your recruiting business here in a little bit. But I thought, man, I've got to know this guy. So thank you. I'm thrilled for us to dive into this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, good.
Okay. So let me start off with this. Encore Search Partners. Mm-hmm. Last year, and correct me if I have these numbers wrong, over 200 or around 200 placements, over 12 million in revenue. Mm-hmm. You've got about 40 full-time W-2 employees. And one of the things that I've picked up on is culture is extremely important to you. You have all of these employees in your office, not remote, in your office. You've had a mindset coach on staff. I want to dive into what prompted you to have that philosophy when it comes to building your business.
Yeah, so great question. So it's definitely not a philosophy that I had whenever I started my first business in 2010. But with that being said, I think that every single quarter, every single year, I've done a great job of kind of auditing what did we do right, what did we do wrong, and how can we fill in the gaps of things that we need to improve. And so having that growth mindset and having the self-awareness to take ownership for some of the things that are failing have allowed us to kind of like organically evolve over the last 16 years in business, right? And so, you know, it's funny when you talk about culture, it's definitely not something that I even had in mind when I first started the business. I just wanted to generate revenue. Hell, I just wanted to generate revenue before I even generated profit, right? And then, you know, you kind of just, you know, tweak what you want to focus on over the years. And so one of the things that I've found is that whenever the culture is right, whenever everybody is rowing the boat in the same direction, then that really reduces friction and opportunities for conflict. And so I'm at that season of life at 41 years old where I want to reduce as much conflict and as much drama as possible. It doesn't matter how much money you make me. If you are a fucking pain in my ass, you can hit the road.
Why do you think so many organizations struggle with that mindset? Because I've seen it time and time and time again. You have a top salesperson, you have a top engineer, and they wreck the company. They're just a complete asshole. Nobody wants to work with them. Nobody wants to be around them, but they generate so much revenue. Mm-hmm. Oh, well, they're important to the business. Mm-hmm. Have you always had this mindset of, If they are toxic, they're gone. Or early on, when you were focused on that top line movement, did you think, you know what, I'll tolerate this for a little bit to get us where we need to be?
Yeah, great question. So I think as entrepreneurs, sometimes we can have tunnel vision, right? To where we don't even know that somebody is toxic at the time. And us as corporate executives, you know, it's funny, like whenever individuals do leave the company, it's like all of a sudden their coworkers are like, oh yeah, that person was stealing from it, or that person was sleeping with this person, or that. It's like, fuck, man, why didn't you tell me that whenever this person was here, right? And so, you know, with that being said, I think that, you know, quite often we are just distracted by the shiny object, right? And you know, sometimes it's a new ERP implementation. Sometimes it's an AI automated lead generation system integration. Sometimes it's commercializing a new practice area or opening a new regional office, or in your case, a merger or an acquisition. And so you kind of take your eye off of the tactical aspects in the business of things that could potentially create conflict or drama. You know, the short answer of your question is, if you're in a position where you're not creating demand for high performers to come and work for your organization, then it is very easy to fall into a scarcity mindset to think, oh, well, this person is the best that I can get and I don't want to lose it, right? And it probably wasn't until I became single in 2018, right, after a 9-year marriage, and needed to like maybe date around and kiss a few frogs to kind of realize like, holy shit, just because they're hot doesn't mean that they create value for my life, right? And so then I've kind of applied that same mentality, right? Just because that salesperson is a fucking great salesperson doesn't mean they create long-term sustainable value for the health of the organization.
You know, I've seen a number of instances where you have that top performing salesperson and the rest of the team, they're performing mediocre at best. Mm-hmm. And so it kind of reinforces that fear that some of the senior executives will have. Well, if I let go of this person, then this is where I'm going to be. Mm-hmm. In every single instance, once that top performer was exited, the productivity of the rest of the team skyrocketed. Mm-hmm. And it was so impressive. And I started paying more attention. It was that once that toxic person was gone, they were no longer bitching and complaining about the toxic person. Mm-hmm. All of that energy went into selling the product or service instead of just complaining. Mm-hmm. And so it moves the culture in a positive direction. And then all of a sudden the senior executive's like, why didn't you tell me? It's like, well, I did. I tried more times than I can count, but you didn't want to hear. You weren't ready to hear it at that point in time. And so I think a lot of these business leaders, they're just not ready to hear it until it gets so bad that they don't have a choice.
Mm-hmm. No, very true. And it's funny because you use that analogy of like, you know, whenever the person finally leaves. And by rule, I think it's important to recognize that if you lose your top revenue producer, right? If it's a salesperson or if it's a lawyer or a wealth advisor or an investment banker or somebody that has that book of business, by rule, when you lose the number one person, you have a new number one person the next day. You know what I'm saying? And better yet, it's like quite often, sometimes that person who was number two that steps up now, they're the number one person. Maybe they're not as talented, right? Maybe they're not as, you know, they don't have the same work ethic or whatever the case is. But a lot of times that newer, younger, faster individual now has an opportunity to shine and can rise through the ranks in order to gain that top spot, right? You know, it's funny. One of my good friends, his name is Vu Nguyen. He's in the Entrepreneurs Organization with me. He went and did a Harvard executive education kind of like, you know, 11-week program up in Boston. And during the curriculum, he would send us in our group chat snapshots of like some of the curriculum and the commentary that they were discussing. And one of the analogies that they were learning was like, there's two ways to run an organization, right? You can run it as a family or you can run it as a sports team, right? This is the analogy that they were providing. And in a family environment, right, hey, we love each other. We're going to pick up the slack. We're going to do what's right. Sometimes you can't give 100%. This person can pick that, and we can kind of like achieve our goals just because we're in it together, right? But the fact of the matter is I think a lot of companies like to try to tell their employees, hey, we're like a family. We wouldn't lie. We wouldn't cheat. We wouldn't steal. We wouldn't let each other down. We got to get each other's back. I'm a little bit more transparent in saying we run it like a sports team, right? You might have led the team in touchdown passes last year, but if this guy gives me a better opportunity because he runs faster, he hits harder, he's stronger, right? If he can give me a higher probability to score, I'm going to hand the ball off to him. Does that make sense? And so it keeps those top performers motivated to constantly refine and hone their skills and stay sharp and be that hunter, right? Or that wolf, right? If we were to tie it all in, because they know that the hungry little cubs, right, are trying to steal their starting roster spot, right? And so, we're looking at it right now. The Super Bowl is next weekend, right? And it's like, when Tom Brady left the Patriots, we were all thinking, oh shit, the Patriots are done. And then they lost Belichick, and now they've got Drake May, right? And look at the bright future that they've got ahead there, right? And so it's like, hey, look, if you're focused on running a very efficient team, it doesn't matter who's at quarterback. Sometimes it doesn't even matter who the head coach is, right? It's almost like the system is what yields the positive results.
So in 2015, your business was struggling. You thought about closing the doors, and instead you decided to double down, invest even more in the business. You hired a VP focused on recruiting and kind of expanding, and then you hired another vice president over operations to help, I'm assuming, put in systems and processes and things like that to lay the foundation for you to scale. So tell me, one, how scary was that, knowing that you were on the verge of closing the doors and then trying to figure out how do you scrape together even more money to pump into this thing that might be failing? And then what was it that actually prompted you to get over that hump and say, no, I am going to double down on this?
Yeah, so it's funny. I didn't know that you were going to like jump right into that, and like I would have this like PTSD with all these negative emotions from January of 2015. But I'll answer it in a couple of different ways, right? So my first business I started was an email marketing and lead generation business in 2010. That company was called Market Share Solutions. Built it up to about $250 in revenue. Was a good lifestyle business for a guy in his mid to late 20s, making, $240,000 after just $10,000 in expenses. But the key is that whenever I was 25 years old, I had actually married a petroleum engineer at BP, right? And so she had the comfort of a 6-figure salary, right? And she had our benefits and health insurance and all that, right? And the key is we just lived off of her income. So I was just like bonus, baby. If we're making $250,000 a year, it's going in the bank, right? Whether it's in checking or investments or retirement account or whatnot. And so by kind of like living well below our means from 2010 to, like you're saying, 2015, we had developed a pretty sizable nest egg, right? Here I was 30 years old and we were combined millionaires on paper. But I had invested all this time and resources in kind of like auditing my business model in 2012, taking a look and saying, damn, I have an email marketing and lead generation business, but half my clients are staffing and recruiting companies. I'm in the wrong business. I'm making these guys rich. I need to be rich, right? So then I started a recruiting business, right, in January of 2013. And because we were in Houston, Texas, just, by accident, like all of my clients were in oil and gas, right? And it's funny, we have a mutual client, right? Magnum Oil Tools was a client of ours in 2014. And so I actually know Lynn, I know Garrett and Derek, but, and it sounded like they had a pretty incredible exit that you helped them with whenever you were at 9 Energy Service. But, with that being said, I had all of my eggs in that oil and gas basket in 2014. Right, when oil was $128 a barrel, if you'll remember, back in August. And I remember being at Eric Blanton's office at Weatherford International. He was the U.S. product line director for completions and liner hangers. And we're talking about closing these offers with these 4 people in Midland and in MidCon and et cetera, right? And Eric said, Jeremy, hold your brakes, dude. We're going to have to put those searches on hold. And I'm like, Eric, what are you talking about, dude? Like, we need to get these fucking guys. You need to hit your $300 million, growth goal for 2014. And he's like, have you not seen the price of oil in the last 2 weeks? And I had kind of taken my eye off the fucking prize, dude. I went out and bought a new Porsche Turbo, right? We were in the process of looking at new houses. And here it was, oil had just crashed from $128 a barrel to now sub 60. Right. And we all know that in later 2015, later 2016, it actually dropped into the 30s. Right. I think even 28 might have been the lowest back then in that downturn. But with that being said, I saw my revenue go from about $100,000 a month. It was, me and 3 guys. We were all, kicking ass, taking names, Wild West, 1099 contractors, handwriting fucking payroll checks. You remember those days. But they still needed to get paid, right? I was paying them a $5,000 a week or a month draw. I had my data expenses. I had just signed a new office lease. Maybe the rent was $4,000 a month or something like that. And there was opportunity for us to expand. And I remember in January of 2015, my revenue was $0. $0. And my monthly nut was, probably closer to 40 grand, right? So we definitely were playing a very different game back then. I mean, you look at my payroll now, it's about $150,000 a week, right? So very different stakes when I think back to today versus 2014, 2015. But I remember I ended up scrambling, and I had a client, Reservoir Data Systems, the CEO, her name is Rebecca Shipman, Texas A&M petroleum engineer, actually went and got her executive MBA from TAMU. But in order to help me out, I remember she was like, well, Jeremy, we don't have any job orders, but, can you develop a website? And I was like, yeah, we can develop a website. So we sold her a $5,000 website design. It's something completely out of scope. We were a recruiting company, but I needed revenue to at least pay the rent. You know what I'm saying? And so really it was just kind of like one of those situations where I was trying to scramble, scratch and claw, call in favors, tap my network. This is what we sell, but more importantly, what do you want to buy? Because sometimes you can get pretty creative and color outside the lines in order to keep the lights on, right? And so during this process of revenue going to zero in January of 2015, I'd reached out to my CRM company. And, I obviously loved the technology. It was a company called Job Science. I remember the CEO, his name's Scott Elliott. And I said, Scott, could you use another enterprise account executive? I believe in your product. I know the staffing and recruiting space, right? I want to sell. And then I interviewed with the chief revenue officer, with the chief executive officer. They made me an offer, $130,000 base salary, right? For a 30-year-old young man that had just gotten married, that was expecting his that had just had his second child. And, I remember, sitting down, looking at the offer and talking to my wife at the time and saying, I think I need to take it. And funny enough, she was the one that had said, no, we can live off of our savings, right? I already survived the first 2 rounds of layoffs from BP, right? We can live more modestly. She even offered to start mowing the grass herself. I was like, no, I think we can afford the $30, every 2 weeks. But we were just willing to make the sacrifice to weather the storm if indeed we needed to. But the key to the success, in the short answer to this long answer that I just gave you to your question, was for the 6 years or 5 years prior to that downturn or that crash, was we just lived well below our means, dude. I didn't go out and buy a new fucking Lamborghini. I didn't have a fucking $40,000 Rolex on my wrist, right? I didn't try to pretend that I was somebody that I wasn't. That way, whenever I did need to weather the storm, I had that safety net to catch me.
Oh, man. So you and I have talked a little bit about some similarities in our childhood. Growing up, single mother, money was always a challenge, an issue. And whenever I think about what you just shared and how closely it correlates to my story. Now, I didn't get into entrepreneurship near as soon as you did, but
you didn't have a wife making six figures that could ease the blow, you know?
That's fair.
You know, you talk all these like influencers online that are saying the secret to success is get a fucking wife, you know? It's like there's some element of truth to that, dude. Dual income households are fucking powerful, especially to a young man in his 20s.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
If they use it the right way.
If they use it the right way.
Exactly. And so growing up without any money, I got into oil and gas, started making decent money, started progressing in my career. And I went through this phase during my late 20s, early 30s, where it was just like, make it rain. Man, the Corvettes, the supercharged G8s, the trucks, the jet ski, all the different things. And after a few years of doing that, I realized that I didn't care. I mean, I had moments of fun, but it wasn't fulfilling. And it was in my mid-30s that I started to kind of grapple a little bit and think, there has to be something more. And so I started pulling way back on my spending and saving. And I kept my income just kept doing this and this and this. But my spending pretty much did this, and it just kind of leveled off. And I would love to go get a new Huracan. But I just like, you know what? That's not the thing. And I knew that I had aspirations to start my own bit. I didn't know when, but I knew it was going to happen. So it was save. And an interesting thing occurred, not just in being prepared to launch my business a couple of years ago, but also as I was navigating through corporate America, I found myself being less afraid to stand my ground. I could stand up for the team. I could stand up for things that I felt were morally wrong and not worry about losing my job. And I saw so many executives in corporate America that would just cave because they didn't want to risk or jeopardize that gravy train, whereas I stood my ground. No, this is morally wrong. We need to do this. And there were times whenever I would win, and there were times whenever I wouldn't win, but I actually had this sense of freedom, like, okay, if they fire me, so what? You know, and that is the most freeing experience I have ever felt in my entire life.
Absolutely. When you constantly have that anxiety of needing to look over your shoulder because you're maybe looking the other way if people are doing something unethical, right, in your organization, or one way that I attribute it to my life is like, it is fucking painful. Every April 15th, when I have to write Uncle Sam a fucking 6-figure check, and sometimes, hopefully this year, a 7-figure check for my federal income taxes. But because I do it the right way and I don't fucking, do any type of fuzzy accounting systems, I don't need to look over my shoulder, right? You reach a certain income level where maybe the only person that can really fucking hurt you, if you're living a life of integrity and character and you have good people and you invest in them, is the United States government. Those people win 100% of the time. So you don't want to go up against those motherfuckers.
I'm telling you, man. So a couple of years ago, I ended up paying a little over $400 in income taxes.
Woo! Good problem to have, baby.
It was a good problem to have. Now, apparently my check showed up a few days late, and a couple of weeks go by or a month or so go by, and I get a letter from them saying, hey, I know you just paid us all of this, but you owe us another $150 in interest. It's like, to your point,
Yeah.
they will always win.
They
And
will
I
always
was
win.
livid.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, fine. Just take it.
Yep.
And oh man, so frustrating. But you are absolutely right. They will always win.
Absolutely. But it's funny. I was going to interject, but you were sharing your story about not needing the material objects in order to be fulfilled, etc. Right? Or, it was good while it lasted. You matured a little bit. I see some salt and pepper in the beard now. We're probably the same age, but I just want the listeners to know that you're maybe a little bit talking shit, because there is a fucking Z06 in the garage. There is a TRX in the garage, right? And so maybe you've lost the need to maybe get a new one every year, but we still got those custom plates on the toys at the ranch.
Now,
this is the ranch, by the way. This is what I'm calling your house.
Now the ranch.
We're at the ranch.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Not to be confused with Sean Lynch's fucking, ranch.
Oh man.
But-
well, that's all. Yeah. The one in Austin or in Houston? I mean, which one we're talking about here?
Yeah.
But yeah. And so here's the thing: the ZR1, it was a dream car.
Oh, it's a ZR1?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Heads cam, porta blower.
Awesome.
It's a little,
All right.
yeah.
Excellent.
And so I bought that in 2012.
Yeah.
It was one of those things. It was a dream car. I had a Z06 and a blown Pontiac G8. I was like, you know what? I really want the ZR1. And so I sold both of those, got the ZR1. And I mean, hell, that was over a decade ago. It's been and I've thought about selling it, getting something newer, but it just hasn't happened. Now, whenever I left my former employer, I had a company truck for years with them. And I still have the Avalanche out there, but I didn't want to drive it every day.
Yeah.
And because of the taxes situation that I was telling you about, I was like, you know what? I need a truck that I can ride off.
Yep.
And a TRX. Yep, it works for $179, and so let's just get a TRX.
Oh, there you go.
And so yes, I did buy myself a nice truck, but I have had a Huracan or a 720 like on my vision board for a little while. I got to wait a little bit longer because I'm launching this.
The
business
McLaren
now.
720S is what you're saying?
Yeah,
Okay.
or the Huracan. I'm not sure. Those are the two that. Well, I would.
You're a little big for a Huracan.
Am I?
I've driven them just for fun.
Yeah.
And I'm 5'10".
Yeah.
And, I mean, my head kind of scrapes a little bit.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
All right.
definitely go ride in one, drive one before
Yes.
you go and stroke the 340 grand.
So that's good feedback. Yes. Yeah. Well, I'm a little bit out from that, but yes, that is really good feedback.
Yeah.
All right. That wasn't the intent of the show. Okay. All right. Cool. Got it. Well, let's do
I'm
this.
giving
then.
you a hard
I know
time.
you are.
Yeah,
I know you are. So you have a special lady in your life.
Absolutely.
So I had a chance to meet her at that same event that you and I first met at.
Her little
and
brother was in town
he
for that
was
as well.
Yeah, I got a chance to meet him as well. So then here's the question: how did you land her?
Man, I've been a little long-winded today, so I'll try to be as efficient as possible. So remember, right? Started a company at 25, millionaire at 30, divorce at 35, cut it in half, right? Jason Lee was actually my advisor. He's our mutual friend who, his company did a business valuation analysis, some executive retention planning, quite a few things in order to help prep me for that exit. Unfortunately, it was not a very beneficial exit, right? So here I was, I'd basically had about $1 million left. I had, my Audi R8, I had a Toyota Tundra and my company, right? So now that was the main thing that I just needed to make sure I had my company intact and there wasn't any type of like forced equity, dissolution event. And so that happened in, 2018. And for a few years, I just kind of like kept my head down, focus, hustle, grind, trying to build my business. Then COVID hit. We're all on lockdown. I've got a gorgeous 4,000 square foot house in Oak Forest at the time, right? Bachelor pad. That became party central for everybody in the Heights. Now we're just partying at Jeremy's house, right? To put it into perspective, I still own that house, which one of the Houston Rockets is renting, right? So, with that being said, I kind of fell into this like very selfish, gluttonous lifestyle, instant gratification, booze, opulence, food. I mean, it was bad to where now, it's 2022. I'm looking in the mirror and I'm getting on the scale rather, and I see 284 pounds. And to be honest, Sean, I don't even know how it happened, right? It was just focused on instant gratification, right? Yeah. Whatever it was. And so I had a life coach that I'd been working with for about a year at the time. And I'm like, Michael, I need to get my shit together, right? And so we kind of mapped out the 10 different areas, right? You know, Jeremy as a father, Jeremy as an ex-husband, Jeremy as a son, as a brother, as, you know, a potential spouse, a leader, an innovator, a motivational speaker, et cetera. And we did kind of like this prioritization on what we needed to tackle first, because that was the key, right? Like when you go to the gym, you can't just say, I want to be swole, right? Like today I got to work on biceps and triceps, and tomorrow I got to work on lower back and hamstrings. And you know, you see what I mean? You got to have a plan.
Yeah.
And I started on that journey, I'll say, in 2022. And so to be brief, it was like, okay, I know I need to lose weight. Okay. Well, I lack the discipline to like be consistent about going to the gym. Okay. Well, what can I do? Well, there's this thing called a GLP-1, right? You know, Ozempic, semaglutide, Wegovy, all the things, Mounjaro. And so I got on a GLP-1 in 2023, and that helped me lose the first 60 pounds, right? Obviously, I needed to buy some new clothes, right? And so I started to like maybe even dress a little bit nicer. I met our mutual friend, Adam Ross, at Adam Ross Customs, got probably 10 different suits, right? You know, and actually met him through the Entrepreneurs Organization whenever I'd won the Entrepreneur of the Year award, and he gifted me with the new jacket. But with that being said, then it was, well, I need to be consistent about, you know, changing my lifestyle away from drinking. So it was, okay, what can I do instead of sit at patio bars 3 nights a week and every single Sunday afternoon? Well, I replaced patio bars with pickleball, right? It was still a way for me to be social. It was a way where I could be active could help maintain the weight loss that I had just gone through, right? Then I started being invited as a guest on podcasts, and I would see myself on the fucking screen, and I'd be like, man, I didn't realize my hair was thinning so much. So then I went and got a hair transplant from a guy here in Houston named Dr. Jezik, right? Mm-hmm. Then I got Invisalign. Then I got on, you know, a teeth whitening thing. And then I got on, Accutane to help clear up some of my skin, right? Because now I'm starting to see myself on video, and it's like, that's an easy fix. And don't let anybody fool you and tell you that money cannot bring you happiness, because money is a resource that can solve so many of your life problems. I had just used money to lose 65 pounds. I just lose money to plant more hair, to clear up my skin, to get a better wardrobe, to upgrade and accessorize, to buy a new house in River Oaks now, right? Because I knew that I didn't want a Heights girlfriend that's sitting at patio bars. I wanted a River Oaks wife, right? And so when you say, how did I land her? It was 3 years of working on myself through mentorship, coaching, development, self-awareness, intentionality, upgrading my appearance, my emotional intelligence, my self-awareness, my extreme ownership, right? And then it was literally sliding into her DMs on LinkedIn. You know, the Polish national team champion, right? 200-meter backstroke record holder in the nation of Poland. The Division I conference champion at University of Houston for the UH swim and dive team, right? This summa cum laude graduate, 4.0 GPA. Man, these are great qualities to have in a future wife.
Man, I should have invited Julia on the podcast.
Yeah,
hearing all that.
Yeah. She's a little bit self-conscious about her accent, you know. But when you say, how did I pull her, dude? I worked on myself for 3 years, became a better version of myself that I was actually proud to look at in the mirror. And you'd be surprised at how good of a dater you become whenever you don't have this guilt and shame and fear and insecurity and, oh shit, she's going to figure out the real me, right? Those are the guys that like to talk about how much money they have, or how expensive their car is or how expensive their house is. And that's all bred by insecurity. Well, guess what? The real girls that have real intentionality, right, that are worth real value, they don't give a fuck, dude. How good of a dad are you, right? Let's talk about family. Let's talk about goals, ambitions, philanthropy, right? Taking care of your community, being a steward of goodwill, right? I had to absolutely work on myself before I was qualified to pull Yulia.
Man, there is so much that I want to unpack from that. But I see there's a lot of men out there that don't want to do the work that you just talked about. And like the whole dating marketplace, it's a whole mess. That's a galactic can of worms. But one of the things that, I have a lot of friends that are guys and, they bitch and moan and complain about it. And the thing is I immediately think, well, look at yourself. I mean, you hang out in bars all the time. You're not taking care of yourself. Like, you look like a slop. Like, what do you expect type of a thing? And the thing that's so interesting about this is when somebody reaches, we'll say, the breaking point where you stepped on the scale at 280 and then you saw yourself on camera and the thinning hair and the issues with complexion, all these things, it probably snapped something inside of you. And I experienced something similar. Golly, when was this? 05 time frame. I was working for Woodforce.
05? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Damn, you're fucking old, bro.
I am, dude. I'm ancient. Yeah.
So Woodforce.
Yeah, Woodforce National Bank. I was traveling through North Carolina and Virginia for an entire year, setting up all the technology for their branches. Living like a rock star, had my per diem, eating steak all the time, eating crap food, out of hotels. And for me, I woke up, stepped on the scale, I was like 225. Now, I had played sports in high school, but it was not a lean 225. We'll say that. And I looked at myself, and there was just this shame. And so I didn't know anything about nutrition or working out at that point in time. I basically started starving myself. And unfortunately, went too far the wrong direction and dropped down to about 155 pounds. Wow. At 6'1", I looked like Skeletor walking around. And then at that point, I realized, hey, this is not healthy. I went the wrong direction. I started working with a nutritionist and a coach to start figuring out what do I need to do to get to a healthy place. So what happened is I started eating healthier. I started training. I started working out the right way, getting in shape, and then it started building my confidence. And then that carried over into the business world where I started making a little bit more money because I was showing up as a better version of myself. As I started making more money, started investing in some nice suits, some nice clothes, and carried myself at a higher level. So there's a few things that are important as a man related to your value. You have to create the value that you bring into the world. You have to become a better version of yourself so that you can then give more of yourself to the world around you. And when you do, it has these carry-on effects through life, through business, through your dating, through family, all of that, and then the friends that you surround yourself with. And one of the things that I had to struggle with at one point is letting go of some of those old friends, some of those friends that were content with where they were. And as you start ascending through life, you have to be intentional about who you surround yourself with. We've talked about Adam Ross. We've talked about Sean Lynch. You've talked about Entrepreneurs Organization. I think last year you joined the Founders Club. And so here's the thing. I appreciate how intentional you have been about surrounding yourself with excellence, even knowing there is a cost, but it's really an investment. How do you get your foot into more of these doors to surround yourself with people that are going to level you up? So when did that realization hit you?
Yeah, it's something that I've been doing my entire life unknowingly, right? I think it's important to recognize that what I wanted probably every 5 years, it kind of like changed, right? And that's perfectly okay. And whenever I say what I want, a different way to phrase it is the men who I respected and admired are very different people today versus the ones that I respected and admired in 2020 versus 2015 versus 2010, right? When I was 25 years old, I just wanted to be rich, right? And then you start taking shortcuts. You maybe start trying to cheat the system. You get caught with your hand in the cookie jar. You get fired from a job. You get a letter from the IRS, whatever the case is, right? And then what I realized is that when you even are cheating the system, a negative byproduct that comes of it is like you're almost like ashamed. And you feel guilty, and it's very difficult to be authentic and confident whenever somebody compliments you and you just know, oh, fuck, man, this Ferrari is a rental. And that motherfucker just said, man, nice car, dude. I want to be like you when I grow up. Looks cool for fucking social media, but it doesn't feel good to get that compliment. You see what I'm saying? And so I wanted to be rich, right? And then when I got rich, I wanted to be powerful. So then I wanted to hire a bunch of employees. Well, guess what? People are opportunities for, conflict and drama, right? And I knew I didn't want to be powerful anymore. Then I wanted to be famous. Then I invested in social media and getting my social clout up, or started a fucking dating podcast. Well, guess what? That gave me the negative feedback, the negative publicity that, I didn't want to be call her daddy, right? Houston fucking CEO edition, right? So, in this new season of life, what I'm really more focused on now is respect, right? That's the social currency that motivates me, right? And so it's like, well, DJ Khaled is a rich motherfucker. I don't want to be DJ Khaled. You know what I'm saying? I don't respect that man. But whenever I look at, somebody who's a good father, a faithful and loyal husband, right? A loyal follower of Jesus Christ, right? Someone who does business the right way. Someone who takes care of themselves physically, emotionally. Someone who is a steward of goodwill in the community. They give back, they mentor, they develop, they motivate, they inspire. Guess what? Those are the people that I respect. It doesn't matter if that fucking guy makes $60,000 a year or $600 million a year. I need to be around that man because he's going to make me better.
I love that. I mean, that is so legit. And whenever I think about the past few years of me kind of starting to establish and build my own social media presence, there have been a few of the haters that have come and chimed in. There was somebody that made fun of my wolf head logo. It was like, what are you, some sort of stupid ass gamer? And I was like, and at first I was like, I thought on it. And then for about a day, and I responded, I was like, hey, this logo means a lot to me. This is what it represents. And this is what I'm trying to build. That was my response back to him. Yeah. And then another day goes by and he responds. He's like, you know what? I went and looked through your content. You're busting your ass. I respect it. So here's the thing. What I have seen is the hate only comes from underneath. The people that have busted their ass and grinded and built something of meaning, they respect the grind. They respect hard work. And they understand that, you know what, even though Sean might be down here and I'm up here, there are some things that he's doing that I can still learn from. Can we support each other? Can we lift each other up in some form or fashion? Now, not everybody has that sort of a mindset. This came up at Sean Lynch's event last week, and they were talking about, how do you deal with ego? Mm-hmm. And it was one of the young kids in the audience. He's like, well, I want to build my business, and I'm going to be a millionaire, but I'm worried about having an ego. And I was like, well, Sean, can I speak up here? I was like, well, first of all, the fact that you're aware of this, I think, is the first step. Also, it is extremely important that you surround yourself with people that don't have an ego and that are comfortable checking you if you start to get into that realm. And it's something that I think not enough people fully understand. Everybody says you are the result of the 5 people you spend the most time around, but not everybody actually intentionally audits their circle and adjusts accordingly because it's comfortable. The thought of, I have to go out and find new friends, or I have to go walk into this room full of entrepreneurs that are a decade ahead of me, multi-millionaires, and I'm just the new kid on the block. It's intimidating. And yeah, if you walk into it being intimidated, check your ego, go into this room and say, hey, this is where I'm at. Like I'm learning. I'm trying to grow. The people in that room are going to respect you.
Absolutely. And I don't necessarily think that an ego is always a bad thing, right? You know, I'm trying to think of like some people that are great entrepreneurs that do a lot of great for our community. Let's talk about Mark Cuban, right? Mark Cuban's done a lot of cool shit in his life. That motherfucker has an ego. Now he is entitled to it. There's a certain standard that he lives by, whether you are an employee of his sports team or one of his many companies, right? He is synonymous with winning and being the best. Those are ego-driven motivators, not necessarily a negative byproduct if you do it the ethical way. You see what I'm saying? And so I don't think that ego is a bad thing. Now, when you start to step on other people in order to step up, then that becomes a problem. Yeah. When you start to judge individuals by operating off of assumptions or limited information, then that becomes a challenge, right? Arrogance, I think, is maybe the negative association that sometimes comes with what we all fear with the word ego.
It's a really good point. Ego can be a very powerful driver. And the other things that you just touched on, the arrogance component of it, I think that is really that detrimental effect that's so closely tied to ego.
100%.
Really good point.
Arrogance, entitlement, right? Feeling that, narcissism, all these different things. And I'm no psychologist. I don't know what the clinical terms are, but you'd mention, audit your circle. One of the things that I've done and been very intentional about with my life coach, Michael Anderson, is audit my thoughts, right? When are the times that I feel guilty? When are the times that I feel shame? When are the times that I have fear or failure or regret or anxiety? Reverse engineering what the motivator or the trigger was. And then guess what? When you have money, when you have resources, when you have time, people around you, you can actually solve the problem. That's the really cool thing about it.
So we've talked a little bit about coaches. You're a life coach. You've had a mindset coach at your business in the past, or I don't know if you still do or not.
Yep, we do.
But I'm curious, why do you think so many people are hesitant to invest in a coach? Whether it's mindset, whether it's business or leadership, why do you think so few actually take that step?
Yeah, I mean, it's very difficult, right, for me to answer that because I'm not other people. I'm only myself. I can tell you that, it's the best coaches charge real fucking money, right? I look at you and what your core competency is today, right? The reason why you charge the rates that you do is because you've done a lot of shit in your career that commands a premium rate, right? And so, I think that we all want to drive a Ferrari, but when you only have the budget for a Toyota Corolla, then guess what? That's all you're going to have access to, right? And so really it's the expense that intimidates a lot of people. I don't believe that, people are as close-minded or lack confidence in their ability to self-improve. They're just limited by their financial resources. And so if you can reframe things and say, hey, look, this coach is not an expense, but rather they are an investment, and I can create and model out a definitive ROI based on my investment, then I think that it's really easy to justify and invest in. Yeah. But that's my own personal opinion. Yeah. And maybe maybe I don't get Sean Barnes, whenever I'm making $100,000 a year. Maybe I get somebody who is, a mentor in a Big Brothers, Big Sisters mentorship program, and all I'm really investing is my time. But that's the person that I'm going to have access to. Yeah. And then that person levels me up from level 1 to level 2. And then maybe I get another mentor or coach. And now I go from 2 to 4. And now I fast forward, I'm at level 7. Now I can afford, Mr. Barnes's $10,000 a day rate, right? Because I know that if I can, and I don't know his rates, I don't know, if he has any outstanding proposals and he's giving you 20 grand a day, then don't shoot the messenger. But with the point that I'm making in my mind is, if you're constantly focused on self-improvement and becoming a better version of yourself, sometimes you do outgrow other people and you need access to that next rung of mentor or motivator or inspirer, right?
So one of the things that is near and dear to my heart is trying to help people progress through their life by developing leadership skills, communication skills, and things like that. And yes, top tier one-on-one coaching with me is a premium. Yeah. Pricing was on. And but I also am aware that there's a lot of people that aren't there yet. Yeah. And so I've been as intentional as I can about creating workshops and events and things where the price point is a little bit lower, and then also creating copious amounts of content on YouTube. We release shorts every single day, usually a few shorts every single day, an episode every single week, and then have newsletters and articles. And the idea is, look, if you're not here, that's fine. You can join one of our workshops. And if you're not there, cool. There's 5 years of information on the YouTube channel. Yep. And if you don't have money to invest here, the only thing you have is time, which you start here, which builds you up so that you can earn more money and then get to this next level.
Absolutely.
And, you and I, before we started recording, we were talking a little bit about Sean Lynch. And that was one of the things that just impressed the hell out of me is whenever he saw something he wanted to accomplish, he would go engage a coach for that thing to accelerate his ramp rate, get there faster. And then whether he continued to use them or not, it was, what is the value that I'm extracting from this coach now? But just the mindset shift of this is an investment. And if you go into it through that lens, technically, you might not even have the best coach, but if you go into it learning, I am going to learn from this, then you are going to yield the result of the investment.
Absolutely. We're all capable people, no matter what our cultural or economic background is, right? And we have to just make sure that we have that growth mindset and that self-awareness, right? But, one of the things you talk about, access to coaches or mentors, like when you and I were kids, bro, we didn't have fucking YouTube or Instagram Reels, you can go out and you can literally have Tony Robbins as your coach. I mean, that motherfucker's got some really great content, right? And if you can't spend the $150,000 a year that Tony Robbins commands as your personal one-on-one coach, maybe you do get access to this person or this person, but at the very least, you have access to their thought leadership, right? And if you are consistent about consuming that knowledge with a growth mindset, then sometimes it really is just creating your own light bulb moments of saying, man, I need to fucking, change this.
It's been interesting for me. I've had executive coaches at various points in my professional career in corporate America. And because of all the acquisitions and integrations and IPOs and all the teams that I've been so fortunate to lead, I have been a part of a lot of scaling in businesses. And so whenever I started my business 2 years ago, I thought, this is going to be easy. And I got into it and realized, shit, I don't know how to start a business. So I started following the Hormozis very closely, living and breathing through it. And then a mentor of mine that's also in the car community, and I've known him for a few decades, he coaches entrepreneurs. And so I actually invested in one of his events, and I've bought all of Alex's books and follow them. And so, even though I'm in year 2 of my business, I had to shift my perspective. I'm very comfortable in my ability to coach executives and leaders in big organizations, but I had to step back and start learning about building a business, building a brand. What is a CRM, for crying out loud? Sales cycles. Like, I had no visibility into all of that. And so I actually had to shift gears and start investing in it. And then, like, financially, going from up here to starting down here, it's like people talk about, oh, sometimes you got to take 2 steps backwards. I took 10 steps backwards.
Absolutely.
My first year, I made 1/20th of what I did in my last year in corporate America. And so I had to step back. But I also knew that this was going to challenge me beyond belief, and that what that meant was that I was going to grow. And I did not want to retire. Looking back, I could have done more. Wasn't going to happen. It just wasn't going to happen. And so I bet on myself to start this thing. And yeah, it's been challenging. You know what it's like to start a business. In the first year of my business, we did all management consulting, strategic advisory, business continuity plans, and I had a team full of consultants. And Q1 of last year, I realized it did nothing for my heart. I did not care about the consulting at all. And so I shifted. I renamed the company from WSS Solutions to Wolf Executives, ended up basically transitioning out my consultants. And then right now it's just me and Mary on the team, and she helps me with the branding and content, and just kind of really started over, basically going from a management consulting group with 5 consultants to just doing the coaching. But here, I think this is part of what you learn.
Well, think about it, man. You know, so first of all, the 1/20th pay cut, bro, kudos to you. But you didn't have all of this, all of these liabilities is what I'll call it. 3 mortgages, 5 kids, a lake house, So maybe it was a little bit easy of a pill for you to swallow. But I think that's why it's very easy to start your business when you're in your 20s, before you have a family, before you have all of these expenses and these liabilities, right? And so the analogy that I'm going to share that's congruent with the story that you just told is it's almost like you went back to school, right? You know, if you had this 20-year career as a lawyer and all of a sudden you said, you know what, I want to be a doctor. That's literally what you decided to do. Now, there's a lot of skills and qualities that you learned in that 20-year career that could definitely apply to success of owning your own physician practice, but you have to go and get the education, right? And we all know that a bachelor's degree takes 4 years, and a master's degree takes 6, and a PhD takes 8, right? And luckily, with your resources and knowledge and connections, you can accelerate that. Maybe you don't need to have 4 years of education in order to experience success, right? But the analogy that I'll give is you were a great lawyer, or in this case, you were a great corporate executive and system integrator, really. And you decided, I want to go back and go to medical school. Well, sometimes it only takes 2 years of doing that shit to realize, fuck this. I want to be a pilot, right? Or I want to be an officer in the military or whatever it is. And there's so many different paths to success. And if you know that it's in your heart of hearts, that it's not what you see yourself doing 10 years, 20 years, 30 years down the road, well, guess what? It is really efficient to pull the plug in the first 2 years. And so no shame on you for abandoning the management consulting business, because now, hey, your needs are met. You got a ZR1, you got an Avalanche, you've got a TRX, you've got a beautiful home on a nice acreage lot here in the Woodlands, right? Sean Barnes is doing pretty fucking good. But the intentionality that you put into being an executive coach in areas that will help these individuals level up as a professional, as a leader, as a speaker, as a motivator, right now, Sean Barnes feels really good on the inside. And there's no currency that you could tie to that other than quality of life, man. So kudos to you.
I appreciate that. It is more fulfilling than I could have ever imagined. Absolutely. Being able to help lift people up. And to your point, when we were growing up, we didn't have YouTube Shorts. We didn't have Alex Hormozy. Like, we didn't have these people. And so I spent 2 decades just grinding and beating my head against a wall and failing and so many times. And then I basically learned how to navigate corporate America. And so my goal and objective is, how can I help as many people accelerate that process as possible? And it is beyond fulfilling. And I absolutely love it. So Jeremy saw my Ironman guy here in the hallway whenever we were just taking a break for a moment, and then asked me why this version of the suit. And I told him, well, I was in Vegas, I saw it, it was cool, I liked it, type of a thing. And then he proceeds to start talking about how this was Tony Stark's first opportunity to reinvent himself, and it might be worth thinking about why it resonated so much with me. So, son of a bitch, I guess I've got some stuff that I need to unpack there, but you are absolutely right. It just hit me like a ton of bricks. And I think this ties into, we've spoken about my journey through corporate America and then jumping into entrepreneurship. But to kind of elaborate a little bit on my corporate America journey, I spent the first probably 12 years or so just solely focused on IT. And then about 10 years ago, I found myself struggling with kind of purpose and meaning and lack of fulfillment. Technology was just easy. Yeah. So I started looking for some sort of a challenge. And I was shut down left and right. I'd go to these business unit leaders. Hey, can I help? Hey, can I help? They're like, no, this is operations. This is for the big boys. I'll let you know if my printer's broken. And so eventually I was able to have a conversation with my boss, our CEO, and ask about stepping in and starting to lead human resources, because we had had 4 VPs of HR come and go in the first 4 years. And that was the whole story, but basically they gave me a shot at it, and it changed the entire trajectory of my life. Because to that point, I was an extreme introvert. I had achieved all of my success hiding behind my keyboard, and I quickly learned, leading a team of 20 bubbly, extroverted HR professionals, I couldn't do it from behind my keyboard. So I had to learn how to make and maintain eye contact, how to effectively communicate. And that's whenever I started to develop my passion around building leaders and high-performing teams. After a year, they said, hey, we need an ESG team. Our customers are asking for a lot of data and frameworks, and then also a project management office. Will you do it? I thought, okay. And so this trend started to emerge. I ascended in IT, started over in HR. I ascended in HR, started over in ESG and project management. And after a few years of leading all of them, they gave me safety and transportation and leadership development. And so I once again started over in each of those domains, because every time I stepped into something new, I went and had conversations with the front line and said, hey, I know nothing. I need to understand what's going on. Will you teach me? And I learned and I grew. And then I started over again in entrepreneurship. And so this is all just a flood of thoughts that is hitting me right now based on what you just brought up.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. Thank you for sharing that. And we can definitely talk about that a little bit more in depth, but out of my own selfishness and ego, I'm going to talk about me for a second.
Okay.
Because here I was, this guy that had experienced a tremendous amount of financial independence, had gone through a divorce, right? That's the crash when Tony Stark, was imprisoned in, the Middle East there, right? Started to build my suit in order to escape, right, the imprisonment, and I needed my suit in order to do so. But people, they look at me and they're like, Jeremy, your fiance is 25 years old. Hey, man, she's gorgeous. She's smart. She's cool. She's funny, right? But do you want to have more kids? You already have 3 boys. I'm like, fuck yes, dude. My boys are 13, 11, and 9 now. But when I think back to all of the times where I was like truly happy and I was like proud of myself, it was all the things that I was experienced for the very first time, right? And whenever you are continually starting over, you're experiencing a lot of things for the very first time. So whenever you get that project accomplished, you're like really proud of yourself. Whenever you see, that person that experiences their potential, you're like really proud of yourself. And one of the exciting things about being with Yulia and going through this journey of now helping her start her business, right? Us creating a family together and building a home together and all of these different things, right? Building a community, helping her start a nonprofit where it's experiencing all of these firsts that I'd never done in my 9-year marriage before, or my 20-year business career that I've had, where my life is exciting again. I'm super proud of myself, right? I'm pushing myself outside of my comfort zone, and we're doing like really cool shit, And so like the analogy that I'll give to the listeners that may be like a little bit early in their entrepreneurial journey, that are looking at guys like myself or Sean Lynch or, these other multi-millionaire business corporate executives in our 40s, right? Is I'll tell you, yeah, I've got a, all gold Yacht 2 on my wrist right now. I've got 5 other ones in the drawer. You know what my favorite Rolex is? My very first one. My 36 millimeter Datejust with the fluted bezel on a steel band. I paid $6,000 for that watch, brand new. But when you could get access to them brand new from an AD, right? Way back in 2014. And the reason why it's my favorite is I remember how proud I was of myself, And so I think that it's important for emerging young leaders and entrepreneurs to not necessarily benchmark your happiness with your financial success and the number that you see in the bank, because we can be proud of ourselves whenever we develop the courage to pop the question, right? Whenever we buy that car that was on the poster in the room whenever we were kids, right? Whenever we hit these little milestones that create a culmination of series of events that ultimately lead to success over time. But the real happiness, dude, is tied to being able to look in the mirror and say, I'm proud of you, right? There's a currency associated with that is very rare. And guess what? That's one of the things that money cannot buy. So literally be proud of yourself. And if you're living a life that you're not proud of, that you are ashamed or you're hiding from people, maybe it's tied to cheating on your spouse. Maybe it's tied to an internet porn addiction, right? Maybe it's tied to, siphoning money from the company you're working for, or miscalculating your taxes, or cheating on a PPP loan application, right? It's never too late. It's never too late to say, hey, that was the old version of me. And starting today, I'm committed to becoming a better version of myself, because it's the pride when I look in the mirror that is real success, in my opinion.
I knew I liked you. Oh, man. Okay, so
it's easy for me to talk about this shit, right? Because I've been in EO since 2018. We've talked about some real vulnerable, fucked up shit, dude. I know some of the tortured lives that very, very wealthy men live. Yeah. Right? I've made a lot of mistakes of my own. Mm-hmm. A 10-year relationship coming to an end, that shit doesn't happen overnight. You don't just wake up and fall out of love with someone. Some fucked up shit needs to happen in order to get to that point, right? And so, I think as men, we have to have a forum to talk about our emotions, our fears, our anxieties, our insecurities, right? And if you can be open and honest and authentic, you might blink your eyes, fast forward 5 years, and realize, oh shit, dude, I've come a long way.
Damn. That's real. And I think it's also speaks to the importance of surrounding ourselves with excellence, surrounding yourself with a tribe of good men that you can open up to, that aren't going to judge you, that are going to say, okay, that sucks. Yeah, you fucked this up. But how can we be better? Today is the day that we are going to start being better. And the right men are going to hold you accountable. And if they're not, this is where you audit your circle and think, Sean's letting me slip. Yeah, is Sean really the right guy to have in my corner? Or Sean's slipping. I need to hold him accountable. Oh.
Yeah, it's that analogy. They say, what's the best time to have planted a tree? Well, 20 years ago. Yep. You know what the second best time is? today.
That's it. Well, I would be remiss if we didn't talk about something that I think is important right now. I do want to touch on executive job search right now and the things that you are seeing. So one of the things that I actually do is career transition coaching, working with executives, helping them like find that next role, or if they've been exited, find a role. And about 18 months ago-ish, I started to notice this trend where there was kind of this turning of the guard. A lot of turnover was occurring in the senior executive ranks. And at first, I didn't really pay much attention. I was like, okay, all right. But then it started happening more and more. And then I started seeing people that were struggling to land that next role, seeing how the interview processes are getting longer and more challenging. I believe that this is the inevitable result of organizations having top leadership that maybe weren't fully capable, competent, or qualified, sitting in the seat for too long, causing a lot of issues with the organization. And now these businesses have been burned so much that they will no longer tolerate mediocrity. So they're going above and beyond to interview as many candidates as possible, running them through the gauntlet as far as 7, 8, 9 interviews. And I think there's this very real fatigue that these executives are like, come on, you're killing me. Some have even expressed, like, they keep asking me about these questions on how to solve issues within their business. And then, oh, thank you, peace out. And they're starting to think, are they just using me to get answers to their problems? And so those are some of the things that I'm seeing right now. But based on everything that you're doing, I would love to hear your perspective. And are you seeing the same thing, or am I way off base here?
Yeah, so there's a lot of things happening in, let's say, executive recruitment in 2026 that wasn't happening in 2020 or 2016, right? And so I'll answer that in a variety of different ways. Number one, you talk about the 9 interviews, right? And needing to see 10 candidates, so fucking like 90 interviews. I think everybody's scared to make the wrong decision. I think nobody has balls anymore in corporate America, right? And so, when business owners almost needed to just make an executive decision, right? In the old days, it was like, who do you trust? Who's got the firm handshake? Maybe we have some rapport because we used to work at, another organization together. It was like more of like a who do you know type deal, right? If I worked at Magnum and I sold to 9 Energy Services and I had a 10-year non-compete and I was waiting for that to expire, well, let me just hire the good old boys that I know, like, and trust. That's the way that business used to be done, I think, in executive recruitment. Right now, I think that private equity changed a lot, right? Business valuations, investment bankers getting involved, venture capital, all of these different monetization strategies, IPOs, going public, right? And so what we've saw, for probably, 5 years, just predating maybe the last 18 months, was everybody wanted a private equity guy in the seat, right? Because he knows how the sausage is made. So he's going to fucking come in here and implement the right systems, the right comp structures, the right retention strategies, the right technology, et cetera, in order to maximize our valuation, right? And so we started to see executive leadership teams get younger, pull those people out of the managing director roles and the senior VP roles at the Stevens, at the Jeffries, at the Citibanks, at the Main Street Capital. You're our new CFO, our COO, our CTO, our president. Right. But I think the last 18 months, there's more of a focus on systems integration, right? With the emergence of AI and automation and outsourcing, we know that because inflation has created inflated job salaries, right? After the CARES Act that happened in 2021 and the $8 trillion of capital that was infused in the U.S. economy, right? This whole supply and demand war drove salaries up, right? And if your salary has not increased or your total compensation has not increased in the last 5 years, number one, I know you're feeling it because shit costs more. But number two, it means that you're not as valuable to your organization as you hope or even think, right? And so anyways, people are becoming more expensive, and we're finding that we can get access to the doers, right? The people that are clicking a button, right? Pulling a lever, whatever. If you can do that shit working remote, then guess what? I can get somebody working remote in the Philippines that will do it for 1/5 of what you do it. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Right? And so now there's this massive integration where shareholders are saying, hey, we still need to maintain profit margins, but there is fee compression, right? There is inflation. Our costs of goods sold are increasing. What can I eliminate with AI? Right? We're seeing operators come in that are systems integrators like yourself, that are doing a $2, $3, $4 million systems implementation, and they're reducing payroll by 30%. These are the C-level executive searches that Encore Search Partners is getting today. And guess what? It sucks knowing that candidate that we placed, right, in that, software engineering manager role 3 years ago, that golly, we're recruiting for his boss, the COO, that's going to eliminate his position. But guess what? That's the season that we're in right now. Yeah. If you can get replaced by AI, your company, I promise, if they're a profitable and growth-minded organization, is already thinking about how to do it.
Well, and I think this speaks to the fact that a decade ago, 2 decades ago, it was the good old boy network, handshake, eye to eye, let's make some business happen type of a thing. And maybe you didn't have all of the requisite skills, but there was trust, and I knew that Jeremy was going to bust his ass and was going to make it happen. Okay, well, that still gets you to a certain point.
You wasn't going to fuck me over. How many people have been fucked over in the last 5 years?
Well, yeah, exactly. But here's the thing. Now, productivity is I was about to say it's even more important. It's always been important. But when you can leverage tools like AI for a fraction of the cost, and AI is not perfect yet, for sure. However, the people that will say extend their usable life in an organization are always learning. They're always trying to learn more about the business itself, how they can bring more value to the business itself. And hey, bonus, you've got all of these AI tools. When you learn how to leverage them, you can bring more value to the business. And so too many people are digging their heels in and like this AI slop. And I get it. It is sloppy right now. And it's not meant to entirely replace us as humans. Probably will eventually. But right now, the name of the game is, how do I leverage this tool to increase my value to the organization? And I don't think enough people have the mindset around how do I increase my value to the organization, because the more valuable I am, the more they're going to pay me, the more they're going to want to promote me. And that's the game.
Absolutely. Yeah. And right now the value is in systems integration and maximizing profitability and productivity. And if your job is not tied to that, then guess what? You need to level up your skills like you knew that you needed to do when you were just in IT, like you said.
Yeah. And I think some people, when they operate at the senior executive ranks for long enough, some of them become complacent. Mm-hmm. There's this expectation, oh, I'm a CIO. I bring the heat. I've been a CIO for all these big companies over the years. You need me. It's like, well, but do you have the skills? Like, you were probably a great CIO 10, 15 years ago. Are you bringing the same level of value today that you were back then?
That's a great point. And it all gets tied back to respect and admiration, right? Because guess what? If you were the CIO of Exxon, Chevron, BP, Shell, your fucking resume looks pretty badass, right? But what if I'm Permian Resources? What if I don't respect Chevron and Exxon? What if I want to be more like Amazon? What if I want to be more like X, right? What if we're innovating and using technology in order to grow our investor relations footprint through content marketing on social media, not, developing, long-term deals with Main Street Capital, right? And so it becomes, who do they want to be more like? And guess what? Not a lot of emerging organizations want to be like the 11,000-pound gorilla in the room. Amazon did not want to be like fucking Walmart. Amazon did not want to be like Toys R Us. Amazon did not want to be like Sears or JCPenney. They didn't need their CIO, CTO, COO. They needed to innovate. And if you are not innovating and constantly reinventing yourself in order to implement the industry's newest methodologies and technologies, then guess what? You are already being left behind by somebody who is younger, cheaper, faster, stronger. And it's really hard to compete. It's really hard to compete.
It is. And so there's a few things that I want to touch on in hearing that. I've seen a lot of instances where a growing company, let's just say they're 800 million in revenue. They think, okay, I'm going to go hire a CIO from a $2 billion company or $3 billion company. Just because a CIO knows how to operate at 3 billion does not mean they know how to get you from 500 million. Right. To 3 billion. And so I don't think enough people truly understand that. They end up hiring and then they have a mess to work through.
Dude, you are fucking speaking my language. So that's what we do at Encore Search Partners is we consult the client. We say, well, why do you think you want the CIO from 2 billion? Oh, well, he's already done it. Well, what has he already done? Oh, well, we're on JD Edwards and we need to migrate to, SAP. And why are you migrating to SAP? Well, it fully integrates into this third party, asset management platform. So what we really need is somebody who was the senior project manager that has done at least 4 lifecycle implementations of this ERP implementation systems integration. Oh, fuck, that would be awesome. Now I go pull out a managing director from a software consulting firm that is an expert in it, and he can help accelerate them hitting their business goals because that's what he does in his sleep, bro. He doesn't come in and develop, I need to hire these 10 people because I don't want to be the one fucking programming. I don't want to be the one doing this. And so hiring people to accomplish the business initiatives has become increasingly more valuable than just hiring somebody that did it for our larger competitor.
Yeah. Oh, man, there's so much to unpack there.
So you need to know what the fuck you've created and innovated in your career. And if you can't say anything, if all you can say is I've been babysitting for the last 10 years, hey, babysitters,
yeah,
we don't need them.
Yeah.
We need innovators. We need creators.
And it's wild. We'll start wrapping up here in a little bit. It's wild how few senior executives understand this and how it takes someone like yourself, like me, to just come in and have well, hold on a second. Why do you want this person from this $2 billion company? And just asking the stupid questions when really it's just the right questions that need to be asked. It's wild.
Yeah.
Okay, last thing I want to touch on. I think for the people that are transitioning, are looking for that next role, there's things that I always encourage them to lean into: clarity, visibility, and value. Be crystal clear on who you are, what you have accomplished, where you are going. These are things that you have to know about yourself, and understanding what is the target company that you want to work for so that you can be intentional about seeking those organizations. You can't just cast this wide net. I'm going to go apply for any company that'll hire me. No, you have to be understanding of what you're great at, find a company that needs that, fill that gap. And then the visibility is putting yourself out there on LinkedIn, sharing the lessons that you've learned, telling your stories. And so many people, they're petrified of creating content, and like, your brand is everything. Attention is our number one currency. You could be the best integrator in the world, but if nobody knows who you are, it doesn't matter. So that's the visibility piece. And then value, I always encourage people, walk into every single interview, interaction, conference. I am going to give more value here than I am going to take. And when you do that, you build trust, you build relationships, and then all of a sudden you build a reputation and brand for helping other people, for solving problems, which more people will want to work with you, and it opens opportunities for you. And I think that's the game.
Absolutely. I agree wholeheartedly. Yeah.
So what is the next big thing for Jeremy?
Yeah. So, started my first business in 2010, reinvented ourselves in 2013 into a recruiting firm. Fast forward to 2026, we're the largest privately held executive search firm in the city of Houston. Last year, we did 196 placements, 12.5 million in revenue. We have a clear path to 25 million over the next 3 years, and we know exactly what service lines we need to diversify into. We're also going to start doing some acqui-hires, right? So acquire people that have started business units at competing firms, giving them fuck you money and convincing them to come over to Encore Search because we've done the self-work. We've done the ERP implementations. We've implemented the AI lead generation systems. We've got the brand, the credibility, all of the systems that can command industry-leading bill rates, right? Bring your book of business over to Encore Search Partners. So that's the business, right? We are excellent at that. The shit that I'm really excited about over the next 6 months is I'm getting married on May 16th, 2026 in Warsaw, Poland, in an 18th century palace to literally the most unbelievably incredible woman in the entire universe. She's fucking amazing, dude. And I couldn't be more excited to marry Yulia and start and continue to build a family with her. And I'm just so optimistic and excited about the future. And then I'll close with, I'm really excited about leaning in to friendships with men like yourself, because guess what? I may be farther along in my entrepreneurial journey than you, but if we were to line up 12 different facets of what make a man, you are motivating and inspiring me in at least half those, dude. And if I can become a little bit more like Sean Barnes over the next 3 years, and you become a little bit more like Jeremy Jensen, then literally we all win, dude.
Damn. Shit. I don't even know what to say to that. I appreciate you more than you can even imagine. This has been incredible. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, man. More to come. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we will have all of Jeremy's contact information in the show notes down below. If you need to place any executives or just need a killer man in your corner, reach out to him. He is one of the good ones. Y'all have a good one.